Hey Joe,
Hey Kate,
how's it going?
uh, doing great. How are you?
Good. That's great to hear you're doing great.
A little bit busy this week. How about you?
Yeah, it's a kind of a crazy week, um, but it's all right.
Yeah, trying to find the post key. Cool. Okay. We just wait for a few minutes for Focus to join, and then we'll get started. Are you still planning to come to Whistler someday this season?
Not again this season, I would say. Have you been out skiing again?
Not really. Not after I came back from Paris.
Yeah, I kind of took a break to settle down for a bit.
Yeah. So, would you say your like ski season is over?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I was thinking of maybe doing another backcountry trip, but like I may do a backcountry trip in May or something. But
Mm-hmm.
for now, we're good. We're done.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it's been a good season. Not
I just
can't be too
purchased the
upset.
oh yeah, it's pretty good for me too. Glad to hear that. I just purchased the Icon Pass like yesterday for the next season.
So that means less Whistler, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about like Edge Car, the local pass,
Hmm.
because this year, I'm in the middle of this year, I'm in the process of transferring back to Seattle.
Wow. Okay. I think I remember you saying that. So then Whistler's not as convenient. So that makes sense.
It's still convenient, not as much, right?
Yeah, but that's fair. That'll be Icon is definitely the better deal in Seattle. So that's the correct choice. That's awesome.
We
Okay,
got
we should go skiing then next year.
yeah, we got unlimited access to Crystal Mountain again.
Oh wow, yeah, through the Icon. I think I'm not gonna get Icon just because I have a hard time with like a big down payment like that and feeling like I have to use it.
Mm,
Um, but I think I might do a more of a pay as you go or get like a, a local pass or something like that.
which local pass are you thinking about?
The Snoqualmie has like a specific pass that has a really good deal for weekdays. And so like after work skiing. And then they also, it's very cheap in December and um, after March. So like April and December, you can ski anytime. And then the rest of the season, every weekday, and it's $400.
Mm,
So it's not bad.
yeah, I've heard it's pretty good deal.
Yeah,
Snoqualmie
it's
is
definitely not a big mountain. Like Snoqualmie is small, but it's still very fun.
well, where do you live in Seattle?
I'm in Capitol Hill, but I'm thinking of moving a little farther north, like above Lake Union.
Mm,
So
okay. So it takes about like an hour driving to
yeah,
Snoqualmie.
it's not that bad. Are you thinking of moving to the Redmond area?
I'm not sure. I mean,
Okay.
I don't have to live in Redmond.
Yeah, it would be nice
I'm,
to maybe,
yeah, I'm thinking
I
about
mean,
either
Redmond's a suburb.
Bellevue or Salt Lake Union.
Yeah, my vote would be South Lake Union slash Seattle, but you know,
Yeah,
Bellevue has
it's
its perks of being very
it's
pristine.
it's more vibrant.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think today will just be the two of us.
Cool.
But let me get started. And Brian said he will join later.
Okay. Oh, there's Brian.
You see my screen?
I do, yeah.
All right. Welcome to the Rangwazi and Container Device and Shims Community Hall. And this is the community hall under the CNCF Continuity Rangwazi project. So we have to abide by the CNCF Code of Conduct. So basically, please be nice, respectful to each other, and if you have any excuse me, if you have any questions, please use the raise hands feature in Zoom. And with that said, let's talk about the meeting. Recurring topics. I don't see any new members or attendees, so I skip that. And please add your name to the attendee list above. And I saw Kate already doing that. Awesome. All right, so moving on to the open discussions, I have put a bunch of PRs that I want to discuss. So I don't want to enforce like a particular order, but the first thing I want to talk about is like release pipeline and then update about observability and removing the Spring shim from continuity wasn't shims repo. And lastly, I want to talk about the roadmap, which is I want to spend like the majority of the time on that. Sounds good. Do we have our preference on which one to get started?
I can be note taker also, Joe, because I feel like you're going to be directing a lot of the conversation.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Thanks for offering. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to start in order. So last week I spent some time on improving the release pipeline of the Runwise repo. The inspirations I got is from the Bytecode Alliance with Banjan repo. So what's good about the release pipeline in that repo was you use the workflow trigger to so basically you use the GitHub command line interface to trigger a workflow for release. And the workflow automatically creates a PR to bump the version. And the PR, runs the build pipeline and upload artifacts. And then when you merge that PR into the main branch, it triggers another workflow to do the final release, upload the artifacts, and publish to crates.io, signing and create release notes, and etc. So this work is inspired by the Webanjan repo, and I pretty much did the same thing. I split our release pipelines into three parts. The first part is pre-release, and it checks some authorization and creates a PR to bump the version. And then that PR to bump version will build the pipeline, builds all the shims, and publish the artifacts. And then when we review that and merge that to the main branch, it will trigger the final release workflow to release everything. So that's this one. And this work also builds on top of David Justice's work on prior improvement of release pipeline. And one of the biggest goal in that pipeline, I believe, was in that release pipeline, we wanted to automatically bump version and commit to the main branch. But that kind of wish fell down because the main branch was protected. So we have to still make a PR to bump the version, review the PR, merge it, and then create the release pipeline. So this work is to alleviate some of the manual work on that release pipeline experience. Does it all make sense?
So how do you get that token to create a PR?
How do I get that token to create a PR?
Yeah,
Oh, let's see.
unless something's
We
changed, they don't let you use the action token to create something that could also potentially run actions, including
yeah.
PRs and stuff.
We weren't having a problem pushing a tag. So that was the interesting part. Like we couldn't do a commit directly to main, but we could definitely push a tag.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think that was actually not so much that we couldn't get the token as much as we couldn't, like the main branch was protected. And it wasn't allowed to have pushes directly to the main branch.
Yeah,
So
I'm not
the
entirely
last time
sure
I
about
under
the
sorry.
token you're talking. Like, can you specify what token you're talking about?
So the API token for like creating a pull request or whatever from an
Okay.
action.
All I
Because
use is GHPR create.
that's interesting.
Which is going to use the ambient identity available to it in the GH action. So that'll be related to
Yeah.
whatever the permissions are on the GH action, Joe. So if you go up to the top where you specify the permissions on that job,
Okay, let's see.
uh,
Is it like contents create or contents write?
yeah, it'll be one of those. So like wherever where's the job that actually executes the PR, that creates the PR?
The pre-release. I don't see I have specified any permissions. Oh, here. GitHub
I
token.
think
That the one?
that is. So I don't think that's the ambient identity. Okay, so where I'm coming from is last I saw, and they could have changed something, is the ambient identity cannot do things that would trigger another action. So like you couldn't use the ambient token to create a PR because that would trigger actions and potentially create a circular thing going on.
Mm.
Did you push this to a fork or did you push this to the origin?
I have tested this in my forking repo.
Does that
We're
create a
doing
fork or does
something.
that create a PR in your oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna
Oh,
say
I
we're
could.
doing. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Kate. I just want to show like the created PR to the folks. It looks like this.
Do you already have that secret created in your repo? Like I was just like I see secrets dot
Nah,
GitHub token.
I don't recall I did that.
Huh.
I was just gonna say we do this in Spin so that once we've created a release, it actually kicks off a PR in another repository to update our homebrew formula. So I can look at what we're doing there because I would assume it would be similar flow.
Yeah, that'd be great. I can definitely check the GitHub token secrets. Another thing I want to mention is the parsing of all of the information, like say the crate, the runtime name, the version, is all happening in the commit message. So I have a special commit message that has like a magic string, automatically tag and release this commit. And when this PR merge to the main branch, it triggers another workflow, and that workflow will see if the commit has a magic string. If it does, then this is a PR created by a bot, and then it parses the version, the crate name, and whether it's a dry run or not from the title of the commit. Do you see there are like potential problems with this approach? Like, I'm not too worried about like people having a commit message that has this magic string in it because it's highly unlikely. No? Okay.
Yeah, my other thing was with that GitHub token, which I'm not sure I understand because I've definitely tried to create PRs with the GitHub token and it does not like it. But
Yeah, I can follow up on that.
but if you say it's working for your thing, that's great.
One thing to verify for the not just the tag, but perhaps consider verifying the user where the tag was applied. Actually, no. If the tag gets applied in the release, can we assume that it's a maintainer? And so the annotation will be there? Or should we also check that commit came from a maintainer? Or how, better question. How do we know somebody just didn't add that commit message and that commit message is the thing that, automatically just, gets pulled in? Because that could be bad.
Well, I would say we defer that to the review mechanism of the PRs. However, I see the possibility that, a slacked review, we might not notice the commit message that contains this magic string. And if that happens, you'll trigger the release pipeline. Perhaps, I don't know if that's possible, we can also match if that the author of the the author of the commit is the bot. No, that's not right, because when you merge that, there will be a commit message appended to the main branch, which is from one of the maintainers.
I think you're right. Play around. I would play around with it for a little bit. I think you're going to see that commit is from the bot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the PR opened would contain a commit from the bot. And then the PR itself, head ref, message, and author would be the bot.
That's right. And yeah, you can see it's by the bot. GitHub Actions. All right. Do you have any other questions on the release pipeline? Do you think this is the approach we want to go?
Yeah, it sounds great. I love having the pull request workflow and all that. So
Awesome. All right, moving on to the next one. I have a little update for observability. So the context for that is I've done some OpenTelemetry work in last month, and then I got stuck because of the inter-process communication that happens in RunWASI. So basically, when RunWASI when the shim starts, at 4 exits the same process again, depending on the signal from container D. If it's start, then it starts the shim, and then the shim itself calls the shim binary to start again, to start TTRPC server. And that messed up the span I've collected in RunWASI. So that was like a core issue that I wasn't able to figure out in the last month. Yesterday, I played around with the OpenTelemetry again. I saw there is a trace context propagator that is specifically designed for inter-process communication. And the idea of how it works is when you want to propagate the context from one process or one server to another process, you serialize that context, say to a JSON string, and you feed that JSON string into another process, and that process can inject the context into the current span as the parent span. So you get a very nice tree of spans. You don't lose any parent spans in that case. So I got this working, and it unblocks the work I started about 5 weeks ago. So can continue to work on that. If you want to see the code, I have it in my own repo. So this repo is basically to mimic how the shim starts, but it basically removes everything else. So in the shim main, if the argument is 1, I call A1 and I spawn another shim process with argument 2. And if it's 2, you can see that I read the JSON from the argument and I propagate that to the context and set the parent of the current span. So where is this context coming from? It's from the span where before I spawn before I spawn the command, I create the injector and I get the context, and I serialize that into a JSON, and I put that context into the argument of the command. So I think this is the missing part. That causes me to stop last time. However, this also means that I have to change Rust extensions to, I'm not sure if there's another way, but I have to probably to feed the context into the child process, if that makes sense. Like I have to figure out a way to do that. I mean, it will be great if this context can be sent back to container D, and container D sends this context to the shim server. So that's it. Any questions?
Just to clarify, so with that flow, for a shim, when they who is creating the first context? Is it RunWASI? Like, is that built into RunWASI, or will the shim first create the context and pass it to RunWASI?
It's built into RunWASI. You can see the main function. It's creating the tracing telemetry, and then it calls shipman. And shipman fork acts at itself in the spawn. And that's if you don't inject the context, that's where the context loses because of another process created.
I'm not well versed in OTel, but is there any benefit to instead having the shim take charge of creating the initial context in case there's any variability on how you would choose to initialize your context? So different shims having different approaches.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Is there any benefit to having the shims create the initial context instead of Runwazi in case they're opinionated about what that context looks like? Once again, I'm not super versed in OTel, so I don't know how much parameterization there is there.
Is there any benefits for the shims to create context instead of Runwazi? Well, the shims are using Runwazi, right? The shim implementation, it's being abstracted away from the core create from Runwazi. So in terms of where, like in the entry point of the context creation, it has to be in the main function. And that main function is given by Runwazi to the shims. So the shims don't, like in some sense, the shim doesn't have a control over where to start the context. David?
So this cool project called Spin introduced some OTel support. How would something like this work with that? Kate, do you have any insight to how they could play together? I mean, obviously we want to make this so it's a underlying facility that can be used by container shims in general. This may be more on the infrastructure side than what we end up seeing go into, say, user logs, or you have the stuff that's going on inside of the app, and then you have the stuff that's going on inside of containerd. Like the stuff before it gets to like user code, almost all of that lands in like the containerd log and should probably continue to, or at least tell me I'm wrong. And where that line gets drawn, it's kind of, here's the infrastructure, and then here's your app. And the stuff in your app is the stuff you should be concerned with. Like, hey, I bailed right here in my app because I, had a null variable or something, something bad happened. And you should see that error and you should be able to, deal with that in your app. But you probably shouldn't see the shim exploded because, somebody approved Dave's PR that, wrecked some, perfectly working code.
That's a good question. Okay, it's okay. It's if you don't, if you're not familiar with the
Yeah, I was gonna say I know we have that issue that Caleb created, that discusses kind of the process he's gone through looking for adding OTel support specifically to the spin shim. And one of the issues that he was running into specifically was the idea that there needs to be one tracing subscriber. And if it's already been initialized, things panic. And so just making sure that it's consistent who is creating the subscriber, and that you're using libraries that defer to the previously created subscriber instead of creating a new one. Because that's where he was running into issues there, was that the subscriber already existed, and it was panicking. And that wasn't specific to something Runwazi was doing. It was actually Spin was using a feature that was using log, which created a universal logger that already existed. So point of this being, you can accidentally pull in certain features that with tracing subscriber will recreate a universal subscriber and blow everything up. So I think creating best practices around this is going to be really important. Otherwise, other people are going to probably run into that.
I'm all for collaborating with you guys to make this a fluent experience.
I would imagine you don't even want the shim spans to propagate to the actual spin application though, right? Yeah.
Yes. So Brian, you said it much more concisely than I did. There's a separation between the infrastructure and the application. The app spans should probably be going to like, some customer observable tracing,
We could go
UI,
both
right?
places. Or it could be the same place, but as long as the hierarchy is like, you probably don't want the shim hierarchy. Let me rephrase that. Like you don't want the tracing span that came from container D to the shim to also propagate up into the application framework. But you may want to export the spans to the same place. Does that make sense?
I think so. How do you differentiate that? Like, are you talking about internally we put a tag on traces that are within the shim?
Well, I think when the application creates, I don't know how Hotel's tracing propagation works. I imagine it's some thread local storage or whatever. Or actually, I don't even know if that makes sense. Is basically to cut off that tracing hierarchy once we're in the actual WASM workload, instead of okay, so we have the shim barrier, and then when spin creates a shim, it doesn't necessarily, because of how we create everything, like we're just spinning up a new process, but with the same memory and all that. We probably don't want to propagate the shim's tracing spans, trace contexts into that application. So we need to create a new tracing context.
Okay. So within there, we would want a new root span at the
Yes.
beginning of the application execution.
Yep.
Okay. Do we want
What's
any
that?
correlation?
Sorry, I just want to mention the application is running in the namespaces isolated by the container.
Mhm.
Would that give us the isolation we want? The
No, not
isolation
really.
between shim and application.
Not for the tracing context. So yeah, I'm not familiar with how Rust passes tracing context around. But I would say like in Go, it would be like, we need to make sure that we give it a fresh context, that context. Or erase that tracing info out of the context or whatever, block it out.
Yeah. So in Go, in the context.context, the span ID and the trace parent ID are both contained within there, and then are used to create a new span from that data. Very similar to what you've done with the JSON serialization of the trace context.
I see. So again, I don't know if there's an API to that, but the idea is to create a new context for the application.
Yeah.
For Spin.
Yep.
And internally in Spin, they also create a subscriber to collect spans and tracing. I wonder if that's like configurable. Like it should be configurable, so can pass the context in. Sorry, David, I interrupt you.
You might be frozen.
Oh yeah.
It looked like he was thinking for a second.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up what a tracing subscriber is in Rustland. We don't have that terminology in Go. The Go SDK.
In Caleb's POC of it, it's not a spin crate that is already doing it that we're referencing. So, but rather in the shim itself, it creates a new tracing subscriber. So that would satisfy the do it for each app mindset of it happens on the Ranwazi invocation. And I'm trying to see if is there a POC where he linked it to? No, that would be in spin, but the shim looks a little different. Yeah, so it's that call to when you're sharing your screen, Joe, it's the call to initializing spin telemetry that under the hood is creating a tracing subscriber.
Right. David, you're back.
I'm not sure what happened. Sorry.
You were thinking really hard for a long time.
Were you saying something, David?
Yes, I wasn't sure how much was there or how much how far I
Nothing.
got before. Nothing. Okay, cool. Um, so is the OTel calls to log basically log trace spans, are those host exposed functions from the Spin runtime? And then Spin has a Rust subscriber to those trace spans that gets propagated. And if so, how is propagation of those spans, like from the subscriber to the collector? How is that? Is that configured in like the spin.toml? I apologize for not doing my homework before. I haven't set it up yet.
I'm sorry, will you say that one more time? I was looking up Caleb's issue.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So from within a spin app that's running, let's imagine we hit a trace event. The trace event ends up getting logged. Does that log a host exposed function that then forwards that onto the subscriber in Rust, and then the subscriber in Rust then sends it out to the collector?
So the host exposed function, are you meaning is that like exposed by a Rust, like by a crate by spin? Yeah, so it has we were just looking at it, but it basically exposes this crate called spin telemetry, and that has an init function. And what the init function does is on the hood, under the hood, it creates a tracing subscriber. And when you're just using spin regularly, you specify what the OTel exporter endpoint is, and spin will send it to that, and that's exposed as an environment variable. So I'm not sure in the shim I'm assuming in the shim we would pipe that environment variable somewhere, or yeah, we would have to figure out how to pipe that through. I don't know what the current proposal is for that, but then that can end up pushing those up to like Jagger or something to see your traces.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the trick, Joe. There's going to be a subscriber there, or there's going to be some subscriber configuration or some collector configuration that needs to be taken into account for runtime. So when a runtime starts, or when a runtime, like when a shim starts, it's probably going to need to understand, but that's on a per app basis. How is that done globally? Like, what if you have multiple apps with different telemetry endpoints, different collector endpoints? Do you? Or is it just like all the apps within this, all the apps within one config toml and handlers all use the same telemetry endpoint?
Yeah, I don't know what the best practice in a cluster would be, but I think the first question would be, say, like maybe aim to support the case where you want to push it to multiple places. And is there a way to pipe the exporter endpoint through? Can we
Cool.
get that from the container?
Yeah, like could we have named subscribers or a single subscriber with named exporters or something? This sounds fun.
It is.
All right, I'm gonna have my computer shut down again.
As a to do, I'll reach out to Caleb. So Caleb did all the OpenTelemetry work in Spring, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much a solo venture, so he has all the knowledge.
Yeah, okay. I'll work with him. And I'll continue digging into the adding tracing to both Rust extensions and OpenRZ. I'm pretty excited that I found out the context propagator. Like I was like, that's it. That's the one solution I was looking for. All right. Moving to the next. So both Docker has a request to remove the Spring shim from container device shims, and it also makes sense because we moved that to the Spring Cube. So I had a PR that has minus 12,000 lines to remove the Spring shim from the DataStaps repo. So if you could do me a favor, do the review, I'll push that in. That's it.
Is there a way in that PR to point people to the new location as well? You might have already done that.
I have. Did I do that? Sorry. I think I changed the README to say we are removing Spring shim pointing to the Spring Cube. So we're good here. Oh, another thing I want to mention is not only the Spring shim is removed, all the Spring related images and the K3D cluster image don't have Spring in them anymore. So it's the whole package. All right. The next one is, well, before I talk about the roadmap, I want to quickly mention the Containerd 2.0 and Sandboxer APIs. Again, I reached out to the Quasar team and I need to pull out that issue. Sorry. One. So if you haven't seen this, I basically asked them Burning 1020, which he's a maintainer of Containerd and Rust extensions. I basically asked him the progress on the Sandbox API as well as the Sandbox API. And apparently they will be included in the 2.0 release of Containerd. As far as I understand, the 2.0 release was delayed to later this year because they are still working on some of the tasks in the Sandbox API, which is all summarized in this issue. I will paste the link here. Yeah, I don't have much to say in this, except that I will take some time to participate in the community meetings of Containerd and help to get involved. Brian, is my understanding correctly? You're involved in this work as well?
To the best I can, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we really just need reviewers and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. The work I want to coordinate is, so once the Sandbox API is implemented in Containerd, I would like to have them implemented in Rust extensions, and then in Run-WASI, and then in all the shims.
Yeah, we should be able to do some of that in Rust extensions already because a lot of this stuff is already in Containerd, and in the RC release for 2.0. But of course, it's missing some functionality that they found while testing everything out. So, but I think it's worthwhile to try to make. I mean, everything takes a lot of work and time, and we have shortage on that. But a good work stream for anybody who wants to do it would be to look at how we can implement that even before the Containerd 2.0 release, so that we can inform any changes that might need to go in.
I think we can quickly pull in the portable buffer files and generate the APIs in Rust extensions. Like that would be like, if I go to do it, that would be my first step. Alrighty, moving on, the roadmap to 1.0. We have like 10 minutes, so I'm just going to do this in speed run. I also presented this in the SpinCube developer or the maintenance community meeting. I have this like very basic gist file of all the tasks we want to do for Run-WASI. The first thing is hardening the performance of the shims. I think it's the top one priority thing we could do. That includes adding observability, adding different testing or more platforms environments. And we also want to be able to have benchmarks on the performance. And Radu mentioned we want to look into the startup performance. So that's or like hardening word. We have to spend time on that. The second item is OCI artifact that James is being driven on. It's doing well. And I hope if James is here, he could give us an update on that. The third one is Containerd 2.0 and Sandbox APIs I just mentioned. The motivation for that is to be able to allow all containers in the pod to share one runtime. We had daemon implementation in Run-WASI today, but it's less tested. It's a little bit buggy. We hope that to adopt Containerd 2.0 Sandbox API, it will make the experience much better. The fourth item is asyncsify Run-WASI, and that's all. I should put this in the hardening the performance of the shims, because Jorge from Docker mentioned that current implementation has potential deadlocks and on Run-WASI, and he did some work to asyncify the Run-WASI APIs using Rust extensions async APIs, but I haven't heard much from him on that progress yet. But that would be part of the hardening. The last item is split the config to Containerd config and shim config. And Brian, I think you mentioned your interested in looking into it. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely something I want to get done.
Okay, cool. And I created a project under Continuity to, well, I named it RunYZ 1.0, and I have all the to-dos and basically a board for track all those issues. Brian, my question for you is, this project is a private project. I don't think I have any permissions to make it public.
Yeah, I think we have to ask Derek to make it public. I was looking at the settings and stuff. I don't see anything on my end either.
Okay. Yeah. And that's it. Any questions on the roadmap here? Do you think there are like missing pieces that are very important, but I didn't have it here? Like to me, 1.0 means production ready, and that's highly correlated to hardening the performance. So everything else is nice to have, but the one thing I really want to get down is the first item.
100%. Full agreement.
Cool. I would also like to follow up on Continuity in the Continuity community meeting to ask if it makes sense for Continuity to collect those spans and the metrics from the shims.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's something I've looked into, and it's hard because we don't necessarily want to pull all of OTel into at least the Go shims, which kind of makes things difficult. But
Yeah.
but there is work. So there is support for gRPC now in Continuity 2.0 for shims. And there's also some work being done to add OTel support to TTRPC. So at least the stuff's there where we could kind of do it. And ideally, yeah, we need to export the shims back to Containerd and not, or have some mechanism to configure everything. But ideally, like we don't have to like pass down a bunch of configuration to the shim
Right.
to do that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Cool. That's everything I want to cover. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Bye.